Buckle up for AEC Trailblazers, The Founders Files, where we crack open the stories of the brightest minds in the AEC startup scene. Forget institutional pitches. We're diving deep into the real personal journeys of these industry disruptors. Get ready for some casual chats firsthand.
Hello, and welcome everybody to another episode of the AEC Trailblazers podcast, where we interview the most amazing founders of the AEC. Ben, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
No, thanks for being here. And for context, so everybody can know a little bit about you. Ben is a founder and technologist with more than 55 years of experience across construction engineering, software, structured finance, and venture capital. He is the founder and chairman of Future Proof Property Intelligence, a public benefit company using AI to help homeowners understand and reduce disaster risk as insurance coverage becomes more limited. Ben's work translates real-world resilience building into scalable technology that helps families, businesses, and insurers make better risk decisions before disasters strike. Ben, you have an amazing bio, and I know you have a lot of great stories to tell. But I'm just curious, before we dive in what you're doing right now, how the hell did you ended up in the construction industry?
Actually, it's kind of a circuitous route. It pretty much started out, of course, in computers and finance, but I had very early on with my first career, I had designed lighting and special effects for a lot of big hair rock bands. So you wind up having to design and engineer things that had never been built before, like, fire-breathing dragons and lasers and explosives and all sorts of things that these guys could dream up. So you develop kind of a black book of resources that you had for your go-tos that may be in optical physics, they may be in pyrotechnics, they may be in at the time, very crude computer equipment. It's kind of the sort of thing you would see really almost like a glorified calculator at Radio Shack. And so as a result of getting that experience with one-off, building things, and in that particular case, a lot more difficult because in construction, everything is built in one spot. It doesn't move. And in this case, you have to design it where it takes itself apart. You move it 250 miles and you have to put it back together. And then you have to do that 180 times in a year. So the challenges to build things that way were much higher. Kind of flash forward after I had been living in Key West and salvaging treasure down there with Mel Fisher, a friend of mine called me up and was doing a project up in Miami, which involved remodeling of a house, a real high-end house for a gentleman out of New York, who was basically turning his living room into a koi pond, which he basically said, well, you do all sorts of weird projects, which I have to say, weird projects do follow me. I've always worked for myself, and it's always been project to project consulting that I've always done. And people seem to think that I can solve puzzles better than other people, which has been a blessing and sometimes a curse when you really don't want to take work. But anyway, so I wound up getting exposed to doing remodeling work. Consequently, I met my late wife and wound up moving to her horse farm. She was an Olympic equestrian in Tennessee, at which point I kind of figured I needed to do something. So I went and got licensed and did remodeling, specifically focused in on doing kitchens, high-end kitchens and bathrooms, additions onto houses. I then was very interested in doing things a little bit more challenging. So I went out and got certified to be able to do historical work on 100, 150-year-old properties, which of course you have to have a whole different standard set on being able to do what you need to do to those. So I like those challenges of the fact that every job that you came into, you had to do a lot of field engineering. Kind of flash forward from that, wound up, she retired from her horse business. We wound up moving to Hawaii And we consequently decided we wanted to try to help the Hawaiian people, which the culture of Hawaii is really the reason we moved here. You could get nice weather in a lot of different places. But we went ahead and founded a nonprofit. We got into trying to build affordable housing. We realized we're going to have to do that more climate efficient and more resilient. We wound up then starting a educational program that was actually the foundation of Future Proof. It was originally a brand, and that we brought AI into that. At which time there's this giant sucking sound of cash, and so we spun the Future Proof project out, expanded it from just new materials for climate resilience into how do you solve the insurance problem. And so we basically, the way I've always attacked projects is take it apart, break it down to what its elements are of what the industry is and what the problem is, and then from there see how you can rearrange the parts to try to solve the problem. Which I've written maybe 10 different white papers on this topic too. I also write, which is one of the things I did when I was in Key West. So as a result of that, we came up with a methodology that the only way that you were going to be able to address the 37 million homes that are at extreme risk now over the next 20 years was through basically remediation, which is just kind of a fancy name for remodeling. So from that, we try to determine what do we have to do to be able to solve that problem.
Interesting. I mean, that's a huge number. How do you ended up finding that out, that there are so many houses that are in danger?
We really got the number from two different sources. It came first of all from FEMA and NOAA, which had a joint report on housing risk for the American housing stock. And then we had that same report that was echoed by the Board of Realtors, and then once again, a risk analysis company by the name of First Street in New York City, who did some fantastic work. They basically have kind of fortified that number. Now, we just adjusted it at the beginning of the year. We originally had 48 million homes at risk. We've subsequently come back and kind of narrowed that down, but that covers 7 different risk categories. So that could be tornadoes, hurricanes, wildfires, drought, extreme heat. All of those are what's going to affect urban populations, because at the end of the day, a house is a component of a city. And the only reason the house exists is because of the people who live in it. So when you start again to go through this reductionist process, we came around to the fact that the number needed to be 37 million adjusted, and that we have about 2.5 people, which I'm curious what that half looked like, that live in those houses. So you have 100 million people that are going to be affected over the course of the next 20 years, which in our particular case, part of our research program for these white papers, in addition to also for the design of the system itself, is we're partnered with IBM Climate Intelligence, and they're providing us with forecasting data all the way out to the year 2100. We also are partnered with the Weather Company, which is an IBM subsidiary, who gave us all the historical data of what each individual address in the United States looks like back to 1950. We felt that our very first educational product was to make homeowners aware of what their risks really are at a personal level, and then be able to tell them what they can do to fix it. We've saw way too many people going out there and just saying, oh, it's going to be 1.5 Celsius, the apocalypse is at hand. But nobody was really presenting solutions to that. So as a result of our research with IBM, we developed the application that's called Magic Window, that's up in both app stores right now, that is a time machine. You can type in your address and you can go back in time 75 years, and it'll score your house in the sense of its risk against those 7 major disasters. and then you can be able to move it forward year by year out to the year 2100, which for the next 20 years, our data is pretty solid. We're probably, our guesstimates are better than 50%. As you obviously get out to the year 2100, it drops off to where you're probably in high single digits. But even at that, if you're wrong, let's hope that we would be wrong on the side of safety of people, which is one of the reasons why we set this up as a public benefit corporation.
Oh, that makes sense. I'm just curious. Is it one of the threats? I don't know, bigger than the others? Like, I don't know, fire. Is it covers 70% of the risk, or you could say they're pretty much equal?
Our scoring system that we have on it, fire and flood is still the number one risk. And one of the things that's contributing to that is the fact that all of the flood maps that FEMA has done are really not very accurate, which over the number of decades has allowed housing to be built in areas that it probably should not have been built in. But at the same time, you're kind of working with the old saying of it is what it is. So the question is how can you mitigate the risk to some of those houses? One of the examples that I use about flood is what happened in North Carolina up in Asheville. Who would have ever thought that you were going to have a hurricane that went 550 miles inland and destroyed housing in Asheville up in the mountains? I point to this as well from the standpoint of the weather is becoming more extreme. These storms are becoming more extreme. We try to kind of stay carbon agnostic, so to speak, because of it's a distraction politically and policy wise for what we're trying to accomplish, which is to educate people about the fact that the weather is going to be getting worse. It is going to be affecting the value of your home because your homes are built with 75-year-old technology. The average house today is 60 years old. And so when you start putting those numbers together and you start looking at where these storms are headed, that's where we wind up with 37 million homes that are at extreme risk.
That's so interesting. And I'm a little bit ignorant in terms of what you can do to mitigate, for example, flood, right? What can you give me examples of?
Sure.
Like how
there's some
you can mitigate that?
There's some flooding that, and we don't claim that we're going to be the catch-all, end-all solution. One of the white papers that we've written was, if you were to implement our system with government assistance at the federal level, you could probably, over the course of these 20 years, mitigate maybe 80% of the housing stock. So, which is pretty significant. That's an aggressive program. Without the federal government's participation, it's more like 50%. But with flood being kind of at the top of the list, we did a deep dive into flooding, and the vast majority of insurance claims, to use that reference point, are really coming from less than 3 inches of water that's getting into a home. Now, a percentage of that obviously comes from busted pipes, freezing lines, hot water heaters and stuff. But the portion that comes in, particularly like in Florida, all of your coastal regions, areas to where you have basically bad drainage and land shifts like they had in North Carolina, if you can have a system to mitigate shallow flooding that's invasive from the outside, then you would be able to basically save billions of dollars. Our nonprofit side of the house over at the TPHA has been working for the last year and a half on a system that we're calling shallows. And it, in essence, is a method to be able to go around the foundation of your house with a spray material that works in conjunction with some different ways that you are able to basically protect the doors against the hydrostatic pressure of the water up to maybe 12 to 16 inches, which under those circumstances, you effectively are kind of hardening your house like a boat. And having owned several boats, I'm familiar with bilge and what the invasive aspects of water can be. One of the things, in fact, I tell people all the time is that I have a very high respect for water because it can make a decision. It knows where it wants to go, and it's going to go there. And the same is applicable in this case. So if you can keep the water out of the house and you can keep it down to lower than the baseboard level, now you're talking about being able to see some real savings to the insurance industry. The second particular risk that, of course, we're dealing with is wildfire. In wildfire, one of the things that TPHA came up with, which was a spray system that kind of looks like a stucco. It's more of a sandy texture, but you're able to go and spray it on the exterior of a home. And it has the color impregnated in it, so you get a 25-year color fastness, in addition to the fact that it'll now handle a 1,200 degree burn by for an hour with a wildfire, which the average time for a wildfire to burn past you is about 4.5 minutes, somewhere in that neighborhood. And of course, there are other steps that are part of mitigating wildfire that are getting a lot of work in California, particularly, which is for obvious reasons, after the Palisades and the Eaton fires and the Paradise fires and several other fires. But in this case, our CEO is actually the co-chair of a organization that has been working specifically on the mitigation side of wildfire. And we, of course, are stitching a lot of that mitigation knowledge, such as creating safety barriers, dealing with things that you would think would be obvious in the sense of you do not want to have a stand of pine trees that are hanging over your house. Again, it's sometimes just common sense, but people need a kind of a punch list. And so what we saw with Future Proof is we wanted to have a way to see what was on a given property. We already know from the address the historical, both past and future. We know what those risks are based upon its community risk in terms of where it's located. So now the question, and this is one of the things that we did about 200 interviews with insurance people, and 3 things that stood out in those interviews is that they really don't know what's on a given property. Now, they may send somebody out if it's a really, very high expensive piece of property to survey it and determine, if they're going to insure it or not. They'll send an inspector out for it. But that is such a small percentage of 37 million homes. We had to come up with a way to see that property cost effectively, which we then have consequently, we partnered with NVIDIA and with the people at Apple to be able to, where you can walk around with an iPhone. You can do it with a Google phone as well. The iPhone just happens to have the LiDAR in it, which is helpful in the sense of where we can record a video walking around the house, focused at the house, then walk around the house with the camera focused away from the house, and then using some proprietary software with NVIDIA, we can build a 3D scale model of that house verbatim in the mind's eye of the AI, so to speak, and also determine what it's made out of. We know whether or not we can see whether it needs a paint job. We have flaking paint. So we can get granular very, 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 very tight. So now we know cost effectively by just the homeowner himself can walk around and do it. The insurance company could send you a coupon that says, hey, we're going to give you a discount, if you'll walk around your house with the app. The app's free. So it's not going to cost you anything to do it. And then you're going to be able to qualify for a lot of different discounts that are already in the toolbox that the insurance companies have got. The highest that we've seen in some states is you can get a 50% discount on your insurance just by being able to do mitigation. So the step one that we saw you needed to have was being able to really see on a given address what's there. What are you insuring? Because when you look at why a lot of these cancellations are happening, broad brush, they're happening at kind of a zip code level. So an insurance company has to say, okay, there's 250 houses in this zip code. This zip code is now bogus as far as we can't afford the risk associated with it. So we're basically tapping out, and we're not going to write any policies or renew any policies or give you some ridiculous rate. in that particular zip code. So in this case, one of the things the insurance companies liked was, hey, if you remediate, if you go in there and you harden these houses, if you got 50 are now in that 250 that have been hardened, I can write a policy on those 50, whereas the other 200, if they harden them, then I can do that as well. So there's kind of like, it's a two-edged sword for the homeowner. One is he's getting kind of pounded on the insurance side, which is a significant problem, because if you do not have insurance and you have a mortgage, which 62% of the housing out there has got a mortgage, then you go in immediately into default, which means you are now in threat of foreclosure because you have no insurance in order to be able to back up that contract you signed with the mortgage company. So that's a huge issue right there. Then the other side of it is this just came out from the Board of Realtors this year, and that is that we're now looking at a depreciation rate for these homes at about 1.2%. That kind of means that your piggy bank, which is your house, that you're saving to retire, pay your kids' education, whatever it is that, the American dream is based upon being able to afford and to own a home and to have that equity that builds up in that house. Now, with a run rate of 1.2%, extend that out for 10 years, which average people move about every 7 years, you've already lost money on your house from what you paid for it. So the depreciation factor of these high risk area homes is getting to be priced in to the sale price of the houses. And the inverse flip on that, which is kind of cool, is that if you do the hardening, the homeowners are willing to pay anywhere from a 6 to 8% premium for that house having been hardened over and above its appraised value. So now not only do you have the incentive to not be losing money, that when you go to sale, you actually can make more than what your next door neighbor Tom is going to get off of his house, which is sitting in the same neighborhood with the same profile on his appraisals.
But how expensive it is, the process, compared to compare to the price of the increase you might get if you don't get it for insurance, or how expensive it is related to the price of the house? Do you have a measurement?
Yes, we've done a study on that, and that looking at it broad brush across all the various housing in all these different zip codes, we're looking at a range of between $10,000 and $40,000 to be able to harden a house and qualify for those discounts that you're dealing with.
Interesting. I mean, that's not that much.
And in the big scheme of things, it's not. But yeah, one of the things that kept coming up in our conversations with the insurance people as well is, okay, who's going to pay for it? And this is where part of what we bring into our AI system is every grant program that's in place, every community support that's in place, and we're also starting our own blockchain-based bond fund, which will basically be able to loan money through our contractor network that we're establishing to be at least a percentage point below market, which you have to spend that money obviously just on hardening the house. It's a special purpose, what we call a green bond fund, that's been set aside just to be able to do this hardening for the houses. And even at that, like I said before, of 20% of these houses, it's going to be kind of like you're a cancer doctor, and you're going to have to say, I'm sorry, I can't help you. Your house is on a cliff and made out of Cape Cod wood siding that's 150 years old, and there's a nor'easter that's going to come in that's going to blow your house away, and there's not much we can do for you. But at least we're able to take what we can see remotely. We then process this through a re-engineering large language model, which looks at what the house is made of, what's the construction, how can we change things in order to qualify it for all this stuff, and then using software that we've integrated or integrating from Autodesk, it'll spit out a set of plans and budgets that are based on RS means, which are the people in the construction industry, all you folks out there that work nationally, sets what average pricing is in various zip codes. around the country. So what the homeowner can acquire is a set of plans, how much it's going to cost, a way to be able to do it, but all that engineering cost up front, that inspection cost up front, we've got that reduced down to a few $100. Whereas before, just to have engineers and all these other people come out and redesign your house, you're spending thousands of dollars for that. In this case, we can focus the money on doing the work and get a qualified construction professional in there to be able to do it. 42% of remodeling gets done by DIY guys. We've got a program that we're working on that would be partnered in with people like Home Depot that would help you acquire the materials. And again, that set of plans is going to cost you a few $100s, and it's going to tell you how much of what you need. It's going to be able to tell you how many man hours it's going to take. And if you feel like you want to job parts of it out, say you need a roof as part of that, then it's going to tell you how many squares you're going to need and approximately what roofs are going for in your zip code. So again, we're trying to empower people with tools. First of all, tell them they have the problem, which everybody's focused on a lot of stuff nowadays, as we all know. But this is a slow-moving train wreck. And part of kind of what my role has become in the company is to kind of be the Paul Revere of trying to get out in front of this so that we can start doing something about it now before we have to wait for the next major disaster, which I have to tell you, every time there's something as severe like that happens, our phone rings. As grimly as I have to say that, I prefer to see fewer phone calls of people who would come in and say, "Oh, I just wish that I had known what to do before. My house may still be standing. It may be in better shape. It may have less water damage," whatever that particular risk profile was that we score. And of course, for the insurance companies, we take their data now and feed it into our models. So, if you're using, VeriRisk or Zesty, whoever the insurance company is, that's basically telling them what the risks are on a given property. In this case, we can take their data, compare it against what we know on the ground on that particular home, what work has been done, and then rescore it and certify it. We, in fact, met with some people at the CES show from France that have come up with a high output little button thing, kind of like an AirTag, only I think it's an ROI device. But that if you've hardened your house, your certificate's going to come with one of these ROIs that you stick on your front door frame. And as the first responders drop by, they already know your house is hardened and they're going to move forward with property that may be at higher risk. So it provides a feedback loop real time for those guys in the front seat of their trucks.
Oh, that's so interesting. And I'm just curious, based on your experience, right, and all the knowledge you have on, houses in general. I'm just thinking on the wildfires that happened last year in LA, right? That it was kind of a nightmare. With something like this, like let's even say that the government cannot be involved and just people are doing it themselves or hiring someone to protect their houses. Would something like that would have prevented what happened or is it such a wildfire that not even protecting your house is enough?
I think it really comes down to the community that the house is in, which is one of the factors that we have to take into consideration in the sense of being able to speak authoritatively to the insurance underwriting industry. Is if you're sitting in a neighborhood and you have 125-year-old homes, they all have wood exteriors. In the case of Palisades, you had 300 plus acres of brush and highly flammable material that was on the hillside behind them. The houses themselves in a lot of those areas were packed very tightly together. And if you recall, it was on CNN, I know they featured it, there was an architect that had done remediation to his home in the sense of making it more wildfire resistant because nothing's wildfire proof. And his house was one of the few that were standing, which we thought that was a real endorsement that if you engineer and it wasn't a relatively new house. He had remodeled and done a lot of this work in the sense of how his eaves were done on the house, the way that he had protected the perimeter of his property to keep things from either embers from blowing in and attaching to something to start a fire. He had put a fire-resistant material on the exterior of the house. In his case, I think he was using a stucco type of finish. But all of these different things, it's a multifaceted solution on a house-by-house basis. And what we see future-proof as being able to do is to cost-effectively evaluate it and give you the tools to understand what you need to do. And that's kind of where we tap out in the sense of getting you connected to the contractor and trying to help you have the money, either through community grants, state grants, federal grants, and private capital, which is what our bond fund would effectively be, to try to get the work done, to see whether or not we actually can hit some reasonable number of remediations on those houses. And there's some that's like, if you look at the Mexico Beach Hurricane Michael that blew in I think it's Alabama, that situation was such that older structures were probably not going to survive it. That was going to be an area that you're just not, you're not going to be able to save, but more than maybe 5%, maybe 10%. If you look at the aerial photography from Mexico Beach, you see just a wasteland of piles of sticks, and then with 3, 4, 5 houses that are just still standing there like, nothing had ever happened. And those people remediated. They put the time and the money into it to survive. Now, they're sitting right there on the beach. They obviously are probably the highest risk category that you could get for a hurricane situation. But then you start getting into the fire in the Palisades. Some of those homes survived, but a vast number of them did not. And we think that you probably could have saved, for the Palisades, maybe 25% in those particular areas. The Eaton fires, similar sorts of numbers. And a lot of that has to do also with what the community is doing in your surrounding area. If you're backing up to an urban wildfire area that's, hundreds of acres of pine trees, which are effectively just extremely tall cans of turpentine, the fire, the burn fat, the rate the fire burns, the heat at which it burns, there's a whole science behind what you would have to do to potentially remediate that house. And you're still going to potentially have smoke damage. That's you're not going to get off scot-free. It's just not going to burn to the ground. You're hopefully going to come back and, that picture of Aunt Tootie in your record collection is still there, just somewhat dirty.
I mean, for sure, there is a limit, right, to what you can protect. And it makes sense. Like, there's no way you can protect everything everywhere.
The thing that we're seeing is that we're kind of sitting at this crossroads right now of complete denial. And that is just not a plan. You're going to have to address this problem eventually. It may take a few years here before we're in a posture politically for it to do it. But in the meantime, we're putting the tools into place to where the individual can act. That it's, that we're going to educate people. We're going to give them a cost-effective way to be able to know just where they're at. And we're trying to meet them where they're at with the tools to at least let them know, is it a good time to sell my house and maybe move? That is an alternative, that, we bring that up hesitantly, but it's nonetheless a decision that some people have to make. You may have to say that economically I can't afford to take this risk. So I'm going to just tap out, and now, maybe I take a 3% hit on the house right now. But it's going to be better than when my insurance gets canceled, if it hasn't been already, or if the worst were to happen and the house were to flood, burn, blow away. There's innumerable different things that can happen. And one of the things that we talk about a lot in some of these various arenas that we're out there trying to spread the word in, is all this is coming back around to drought. We're in a 25-year super drought right now through the entire Colorado River Valley and the West Coast. It's not going to get any better. A lot of people are predicting it could go on for 50 years. Anybody who's seen any of those pictures that hit the news a year or so ago of the barrels with bodies in them that were showing up in the mud, and I think it was Lake Mead from the golden days of Las Vegas casinos. See that stuff's been underwater for 75 years, and the water level's still going down. Of course, there's a whole bunch of people fighting over the water from one end of the Colorado to the other, but that services like a population of 100 million people, maybe even more. I mean, Los Angeles gets a great deal of their water already from that area. But when things dry out, it starts a chain reaction. And the next step, of course, is wildfire. The next step, of course, is crop failure. The next step is where you're going to have displacement of the land, like landslides, because now there's nothing holding it in place. And you get torrential rains where technically they didn't have them before. So when you look at all these different weather patterns shifting around, and the fact that all of them are coming back around to the ocean temperatures and how the overall temperatures there are disrupting the normal, or at least what's been normal for the last number of generations, the evaporation cycle. It's raining where it didn't before. It's dry where it is now. I mean, if you look at some of our forecasting models that go out to the end of the century, and like I said, I couch that with a hearty dose of percentages of error, but still you see things like the Imperial Valley in California is just it's desert. You can't grow anything there. Likewise, the corn and hog belt through Iowa, Nebraska, Indiana, all that area, it's already in a drought now. And of course, that's a tremendous agricultural production area. They're relying now on groundwater, which they're pumping at a rate of millions and millions of gallons a day. And then on top of that, the aquifer that supplies the vast amount of the continental United States, it is finite. I mean, it's not perpetual that you just can continue to pump tens of millions of gallons out of it and not eventually exhaust it. And the recharge rate for that aquifer is 6,000 years. So, it's kind of like we've got to get smarter on a lot of different levels. Only one of those is the fact that our houses are a big part of it. But, as we come back around to it, is, people are the driving force here. If you don't have people, you don't need homes. You don't need contractors. You don't need anybody else. That's the beginning of the headwater, as they say. And so what we're trying to do is get people to understand that there is a risk brewing, that it is a slow-moving train wreck, and we know that you've got tons of other things that you need to focus on. But if you also find out today what you need to do to your house, then you're going to be in a much better situation to say, okay, now I'm going to break this project down, which our software does that too. It'll break it down into modules to where you can say, okay, this year I can afford to do, module A, and next year I'm going to do B. So at least you're not just putting your house's title on the table at the casino and betting the whole thing that you're going to come up with double black. One of the unfortunate aspects of America, and having lived in Europe, I saw a different side of the coin, is that we all seem to believe that it won't happen to me. In other words, Tom's house down the street, he's going to burn, but it won't happen to me. So since it's not going to happen to me, I don't have to worry about it today. Well, you have to start thinking about some of these things today, because you can do them, kind of evolutionary, or all of a sudden a huge storm or a fire burns through and now it's become revolutionary. And now you really do have a problem, because you're talking about fewer contractors are going to be available. Cost of materials are all going to go up in order to try to rebuild. I mean, you can go down to Florida and look what the aftermath was of all these different hurricanes. that have gone through the really bad ones like Andrew and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, your cost of materials and labor just goes through the roof, and it takes years. There's some places that still haven't rebuilt, and they're 10 years out. And you start talking about the most extreme scenarios. These people have got to live somewhere, and people live where there are resources. Where are you going to go if you start to have migration of people that can't get their mortgages, or can't keep their mortgages because they can't get insurance on it? So now you create property deserts in these various areas because of the economic impact or the threat of an economic impact. Because right now, this 1.5% or this 1.2% depreciation I'm talking about, these are all as a result of perceived risk. They haven't even hit real risk yet. So if you can imagine, and of course we call it kind of a cascading economic crisis, when you start talking about a major percentage of failures with these homes, the displacement of people, the depreciation to zero of housing stock in these various areas, and how's that going to hit the GDP when you start having all these foreclosures and all these empty houses? And you can't sell them to somebody. If you've got cash, are you going to go in and buy a house? You get it really cheap, but then you're going to build a house on it. What are you going to do with that land? Nobody. You can't do anything with it. It's almost kind of become, cursed land, so to speak. And then that rolls right on up to your mortgage provider, and he's sitting on top of a whole pile of foreclosure defaults, and he sold all that paper to Freddie or Fannie Mae, which basically now is going right back to the taxpayers. So the cycle of the economic impact of it over 20 years, is very, very dramatic, which is one of the things we really focused in on with one of our white papers is just what does this look like? Let's say that you lose 10% or you lose 20% of this housing stock. It's $22 trillion. You don't have to have very many percentage points. Say 10% of the housing stock gets wasted over the course of a year or two. And that's, what does that come out to mathematically? A couple of $1 trillion. What is that? Half a GDP point? And I'm just kind of, spitballing on what those numbers are. But it's it's a problem that we need to address now. Start now. Get ahead of the problem. Because if you don't, the catching up part's going to be really tough.
We have future proof now, so hopefully it's not going to happen, right?
Well, we want to be able to make a difference for both the people who own the homes as well as the houses themselves, and the economics of how it affects us as America, which of course we're not alone in this. I mean, you start looking at these risk factors on a global level, which our system design is to be able to cookie cutter out of the American market. But you have $100 trillion at risk globally right now.
Yeah,
it's a lot of money.
I mean, it's not only money; it's just lives and time.
Absolutely,
it's so much more than that. But I mean, what you guys are doing is amazing, and I love it. I think it's so cool, and it's so much needed because it's a must. It's not something.
Well, so many people can benefit. Yeah, I mean, not only the homeowners are benefiting, but think about the contractors. I mean, and what they are going to be able to do. It creates jobs. It creates wealth in that particular sector. It opens up an entirely new market to construction that, yes, you have remodeling, but now you have very focused that's climate disaster mitigation remodeling. So like I said, we're creating new categories of work. The same thing with materials. We look at a lot of different materials as it relates to how can I harden this house against fire? How can I harden this house against flood? We're trying to create systems of materials, over on the nonprofit side that are just more options for the contractor, because as anybody who's done remodeling knows, you do a lot of field engineering. You get in there and you open up a wall, and all of a sudden you're going, oh, we're going to have to do something a little different than what we thought we were going to have to do. And that's really where remodeling contractors, which according to the numbers we get, there's about 120,000 remodeling contractors, people who kind of focus their specialties in that area. And that's the army of people that we need out there that can take these plan sets that basically drop into their email box and get with the homeowner and say, okay, how can we get this fixed? And then we're going to plug them right back into the insurance side of it. That's part of what we do, is to kind of, we build a bridge, is kind of how we see it. We have homeowners on one side, we have insurance company on the other side, and the people on that roadway deck are the contractors. Those are the doers that are out there that we feel. We originally were going to go down to the NHAB show next week and start talking to people, but we really think that it's a little premature for us and that particular audience. And so the folks we're talking to now is to try to reach the homeowners, to kind of make them aware that this is something they need to start thinking about. Likewise to, of course, raise more money, because, AI, like I said at the beginning, is this giant sucking sound of cash in terms of doing what it is. We've been very fortunate so far in the sense of what we have raised, and the fact that we've now become a inception partner with NVIDIA, which is going to be enormously helpful for us, both technologically. They're going to cut a year off of our development cycle with the 3D modeling and material identificational part of it. And also they have some reasoning software in the AI that's going to be very helpful, because ultimately our Magic Window product is going to be expanded out to where it'll be an educational tool for schools. We'll be able to also scan the inside of your house to determine safe rooms, be able to help you be able to make sure you got that go bag or whatever it is. And we're using some technology from France that is what's called a comfort bot, which effectively it's a chat bot like you would go into, OpenAI and play with their stuff. But in this case, it has a very calm and soothing voice and says, well, we have a tornado coming. Remember what we talked about? We're going to go in the bathtub now, and we're going to cover ourselves with a mattress, or after the storm, in the sense of, okay, we came through this, and let's go walk around the house with the camera again, because we're going to file our insurance claim. So that, that's another aspect of this remote field work that the technology is capable of performing, because you can have a real-time claim in on your house within hours of the time that you can walk around it.
I mean, there is so much you guys can do, and I do believe that you're gonna change the market. And I know you're a really busy guy, so I don't want to take more of your time. But
I love having these conversations, Dalton. It's just I talk about this stuff all day long to people. Like I said, I've kind of become the evangelist of sorts on the topic, because I've written a lot of papers about this, and I work with the folks at Columbia University on their vision of a disaster preparedness educational tool, and we're stitching a lot of what they do into our thinking, because we started out just focused on the home and the remediation, and frankly, that's what pays the bills. But when you start looking at the fact that you can put this into a classroom setting, which is all now the next generation is all going to be taught on iPads and with digital coursework and stuff, to be able to have a course on disaster preparedness that they can then take home and say, and we're even gamifying it, like, hey, today we're going to play the game called Find the Safe Room in our house. I'm not into the gaming part. I'm sure they'll come up with something very clever that'll appeal to a 10-year-old. But this next generation is going to inherit this problem. It's bad enough that my generation, to a degree, is causing it. But the ones that are behind me, down to that level of the ones that are all, 2 years old, 3 years old stuff, they're going to wind up in a house, we hope. and that they're going to be able to inherit a method to be able to address a problem that, whether or not you want to think it's man-made or whether it's by nature, just look out the window. The weather's changing. I mean, you don't. It does not take, as Bob Dylan says, it doesn't take a weatherman to know which way the wind blows, and it's an ill wind that is on the horizon line. We were actually fortunate last year. Yeah.
It's not about politics or it's
no, it's about people,
happening, whether you like it or not. So
yeah, exactly. So we said before, we're not going to just be another company that goes out there and tells you this is what your risk is, and then leaves you standing at the door hoping to get a kiss goodnight. We say you got to go through the door. You got to give people solutions, give them actionable tools to where they can take things into their own hands, because frankly, there's nobody on a white horse that's going to come rescue you these days.
No.
Got to depend on yourself.
This has been great. And before we say goodbye to each other, can you tell everybody where they can know more about Future Proof and also contact you as well?
That would be fantastic. There is, first of all, you can go to our website, which is futureproof.org. You'll find there under our methodology page how we do what we do. It's got some of our white papers there if you really want to deep dive into what this problem is that we've identified and how we see that remediation for disaster mitigation is really the only practical solution for it. At the website itself, you can book a meeting with me. You can download some of these different other reports that we have. You can go to the app stores at both Apple as well as Google, and you can download Magic Window, type in your address, see what your house looks like. We're going to score it. We're going to give you some tools to be able to understand a little bit better what your options are. It also has a full report. If you want to order that, it takes a couple of hours for the system to generate it. It costs $24.95 for that report. Some of those things come out, they're 40 pages long. We'd love to give those away as well, but those get into what returns on investment are. It breaks your project down into manageable bites as we see it. We are not making available yet until later this year the report module to where you're going to be able to do the scan. We originally were hoping to have it out next quarter. It's probably going to be third quarter now that NVIDIA has come into the picture. And so our programmers are kind of scrambling to try to integrate some stuff that we were shown kind of in private in Las Vegas last month. So, and because, what we had was good, what they're giving us is excellent. Anyway, though, and of course you can go to Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, X, any of the social media formats in terms of being able to find us through there. If someone is interested in investing, we have two different offerings that are available. One's retail. You can come and buy some of our common stock for as little as $100. That's at netcapital.com/futureproof. Or if you're a venture capitalist or family office or a larger investor and would like to, that's accredited, we also have a Reg D offering that's available. These are all registered offerings. We're the real deal. We're planning on taking this thing all the way to the goal line and hopefully make more people aware that they need to start looking at this.
Amazing. Thanks so much for your time, Ben.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. Awesome. Hope that all goes well with you down there. You're kind of in hurricane land. So I wish you the best. We don't get the hurricane forecast for another month or so. And I have to wonder, they've stripped a lot of our resources out of the government that generates that report. We were very lucky last year, in my opinion. Of course, that doesn't help people in the Palisades or at Eaton that their homes burned down to say, oh, we were lucky. They unfortunately weren't. But hurricane season and fire season now are getting ready to become just kind of one continuous situation. The hurricane season is getting longer. The fire season now is considered year-round. They don't even call it a season anymore. And of course, it's now spread to Colorado even, which one did not think that Colorado was necessarily a wildfire risk. But in 20 years, where we have 17 states today that have high risk, we'll have 34 by then. So we got to get busy. We got to get some contractors out there driving some nails.
It's just insane, but yeah. All right, man. Thanks
All
so
right,
much
hey, John,
for your
have
time.
a great afternoon. I'm
You too.
going to dive into writing a bunch of emails.
Yeah, me too, and enjoy Hawaii. And just chill. All right.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for everything. Appreciate it.
Thanks to our listeners. If you like this content, you can find past and upcoming episodes in ascworks.everse.com and at all of our Everse social media. We'd love to hear from you and recommendations for new content, so leave us a DM and we'll make sure to catch it.